Hey, it's Mel and today I'm filming my August wrap-up and September TBR. I read 14 books in the month of August, so I guess I'd better get started. The first 9 books I read during the booktubeathon, and the first one of those is Noggin by John Corey Whaley. This is a book about a boy who dies of cancer and before dying agrees to be part of this program where they take his head and put it on someone else's body, and it works, and he wakes up 5 years after he died and everything's different and strange, and he's trying to adjust to his new life, and he also has to go back to school, which is a bit of a bummer. But this was a bit strange and I liked it. I didn't love it. It was like hilarious at times and weird at others, but I really don't like sci-fi as a genre, so it was pretty good considering. The second book I finished I absolutely adored, and that is Daughter of Smoke and Bone by Laini Taylor. This is the first book in a trilogy about a girl who has naturally blue hair, but it's not naturally. It's a wish because her father figure person who takes care of her, or did take care of her when she was growing up, deals with teeth and wishes, and he's a chimera, which is part animal, part human. And at the start of this book she is an art student in Prague, and the imagery for that is just beautiful because of the landscape, and at one point she goes up to like the highest building and just looks out over it as the sun rises, and it's just beautiful. But she also spends her time doing services for Brimstone, who is the chimera that is her father figure, so she kind of lives in both worlds, and then she gets locked out of the other world. The second book I read is also a really great book, and that is Miss Mayhem by Rachel Hawkins, the second book in the Rebel Belle trilogy. I cannot wait for the third book in the series to come out. It's called Lady Renegade and it's purple, and I just can't wait because the first 2 books were so good. I read Rebel Belle not too long ago, like pretty recently, and it's great. It's about a girl who goes to prom and she's all popular and a cheerleader and she has a great boyfriend, but then the janitor of her school comes into the bathroom after her and dies and kisses her, and then she may or may not kill her history teacher and she gets powers, and it's really weird. And then she discovers that she has to protect the only boy in her entire school that she actually dislikes, and they have this kind of rivalry thing going on. I was a bit confused of how it ended, but I really did like it. After Miss Mayhem I read Unspeakable by Abby Rushton. This is a book about a girl who is mute and has been mute for a very short time, and she just doesn't speak, but then this new girl comes to school and her name's Jasmine, and it makes her want to talk because the friendship, and then a little more than friendship, and it's just adorable. This was the book that I read while not letting go of it because that was one of the challenges for the booktubeathon, and it was difficult, but I did it. The next book I finished was one that I was really looking forward to and then I kind of didn't like, and that was Across the Universe by Beth Revis. This is a sci-fi book about a girl who gets on the spaceship heading to a new world with her parents because they're setting up life on a different planet and they're going to be frozen, and they get frozen, and then she's woken up 50 years before the 300 years are up, and there are people on the ship and they're all like identical, and it's really messed up, and it's the first book in a trilogy. But I'm not going to read the other books because I didn't like it, because I don't like sci-fi, because I put myself in their position, and if it's like the end of the world or they're stuck on a ship or something like that, it's just awful. The next book I recommend to anyone who likes DJing, and that is The Song Will Save Your Life by Layla Sales. This is a book about a girl who's kind of depressed and suicidal, and then she accidentally runs into this whole rave thing, and then she gets friends with the DJ, and then she starts DJing, and it's like a huge game changer for her whole life, and she sneaks out like every Thursday and she kind of has this thing with the DJ. But it was really good, and while listening to the soundtrack that's in the back of the book while reading the book, it was really cool. And I really knew nothing about DJing before reading this book, and it educated me on a lot of different technical things. The next book I love way more than I thought I was going to, and that is To All the Boys I Loved Before by Jenny Han. This is a book about a girl who's written love letters to every single boy that she's ever loved or hasn't really loved, like only talked to a couple times. It's a special thing that she does to get over boys, and after she writes the letters she's all like, okay, I'm good now. Those letters are all sent out for some reason, and she has to deal with the consequences. And I thought that was going to be like the main part of the book, but it wasn't. That was only like the tiny setup bit at the start, and her sister goes off to college, and then her sister breaks up with her boyfriend, and then to avoid a conversation about her letter to said boyfriend, she starts up a fake relationship with this other guy that she sent a letter to, and it's just adorable and hilarious, and I loved it so much. And I'm not into the whole contemporary romance thing. Like, I really don't like it that much, but this was so good, and I have the sequel and I can't wait to read it. And after that I ran out of books that I planned to read during the booktubeathon, so I have 2 more that I read that were just ones that I found and read, and that is It's So Prom So Deal With It by Julianne Peters. I've read Define Normal, Luna, Girl to Girl, and Keeping You a Secret by Julianne Peters, so I really like her books, and this one's following 2 best friend type people. One, Luke, he's bi, and then Azure, who likes the ladies, and they both like their other best friend, and the 3 of them are helping to plan and make a alternative prom with the other members of the prom committee, and it goes from learning that this thing is a possibility to the actual prom itself, and I really liked it. I didn't like some of it, but that normally happens with her books. I liked most of it. It was really good, and I read it really quickly. The next one is one I probably should have read a very long time ago, and that is Throne of Glass by Sarah J Maas. This is the first book in a incredibly long, incomplete series following this assassin who's taken to a prison camp and then released, but not fully released, but released into the care of the prince and the head of the army, and they help train her for this competition that takes place in the first book to work for the king, which she's kind of resentful for. There's also a fantasy element, and it's really good, but it did take me longer than any other book that I read during the week of the booktubeathon, but I did really enjoy it, and I can't wait to get to the other books in the series, and I know that one just got released. The next one kind of has a backstory to why I read it, and that is The Wizard of Oz by L. Frank Baum, and I read this because I realised that I had 2 Wizard of Oz type books, but I did not have The Wizard of Oz in itself, and I thought I should refresh myself on the source material, seeing as I've only seen the movie twice, just to know how to read the other ones, because I have Dorothy Must Die and Wicked by 2 completely separate authors, one being it takes place after The Wizard of Oz, and one being a prequel to The Wizard of Oz from the Wicked Witch's perspective. There were so many differences between this and the movie, I thought it was quite strange. The next book I finished, I started the month before, and I was planning to read during the 3 days before the booktubeathon, but I just didn't get around to it, and that is The Lost Hero by Rick Riordan, the first book in the Heroes of Olympus series, the companion series to the Percy Jackson and the Olympian series. If you don't know what the Percy Jackson series is about, it's the son of Poseidon, who is a demigod, and he goes to a demigod camp, and he's blamed for this taking of a lightning bolt, but it wasn't him, it was this other guy, and then there's this mess with a Titan war and stuff, and these books take place after that and also involve a Roman demigod camp and the Roman versions of the gods. This follows 2 Greek demigods and 1 Roman demigod, and they are Leo, Piper, and Jason. I love these books so much, even though they're kind of children's books, and I really like mythology, so these are kind of perfect. The next one I read because I went to London and then bought it in a bookshop, and then on the train ride back I didn't have any other books and I needed a way to distract myself from the screaming children, and that is Grasshopper Jungle by Andrew Smith. This is a book about a teenage boy who is in love with both of his best friends and the end of the world, and I really like the tagline on the front of the book, and it is "Love, Giant Bugs, and the End of the World," which pretty much sums this book up pretty well. I didn't like it by the end, but I really enjoyed like the first half of it, and then this boy literally thinks about sex every other page. It's ridiculous. I'd say if you're into really weird books, go for it, but I don't know, I can't really tell you what to not read. The next book is The Son of Neptune, the second book in the Heroes of Olympus series. So this is the book directly after The Lost Hero, but told from 3 different demigods' perspective. Percy, who is the main character in the Percy Jackson series, but then he lost his memory at the start of this book. There's also Hazel and Frank, who are both incredibly adorable, and this one dealt very heavily with the Roman versions of the gods rather than the Greek ones. And my favourite part of this book was when Nico wore a toga for 10 pages, but it was the best 10 pages ever because he wore a toga. The last book that I finished last month I finished yesterday, and that is The MisEducation of Cameron by Emily Danforth, and this is a book about a girl who is 12 in 1989 and then it goes through her being 16 or 17, and it's her life up till 1993, and her parents die the very first day that this book is set, and then she's also been kissing her best friend, so she thinks it's kind of her fault. And then there's the tales of her other female conquests, and then she gets discovered by people and is sent to a Christian camp school thing that tries to straighten her out, and it doesn't really work, but it was weird and I liked it, and then I didn't really like it, and then I kind of liked it again. I don't know, it's way too big for a contemporary, I can show you that, because it's 407 pages and contemporaries just aren't that long. But I know that it had to be long for the story it was telling, and I don't think it could have been fit into 2 different books. It just took a long time to read, and I think that many people had that issue with it. So those were the 14 books that I read in August, and now on to the ones that I hope and plan to read in September. So the first book that I plan on finishing is The Iron Trial, the first book in the Magisterium series by Cassandra Clare and Holly Black. These are 2 of my favourite authors. Unfortunately, this book is not that great. I mean, they were counting sand for 50 pages. I'm past halfway, and I know that the second book in the series is coming out this month, so maybe I'll get that. I hope it's going to be better because it just needs to be. And it's about this guy that's sent to this magic school that's in a cave, and you know that something's wrong from the very first chapter when he's a baby and he's needed to be killed, but then he wasn't killed, and it's just weird. The second book that I plan on finishing is also one that I've already started, but this one I started a really long time ago, and that is Siege and Storm by Leigh Bardugo. I took it out of the library ages ago after I read the first book in the series, because this is the second book in the Grasshopper trilogy. The first book being Shadow and Bone, not to be confused with Daughter of Smoke and Bone, which is 2 completely different series. But I liked the first one, it was a bit much, but the second one, I only got 80 pages in before I had to return it. So I got it, and then they're currently on a boat. But I think if I just concentrate, I can probably get through this before school starts on the 7th. The next book is probably extremely predictable, and that is The Mark of Athena by Rick Riordan, the 3rd book in the Heroes of Olympus series, because I can't stop reading them now. Such a big book, I'll probably read it in a couple of days and it will be lovely. This one, I believe, has the points of view from Piper, Annabeth, Leo and Percy. And I can't really say anything about this book because I don't know what it's about. It's probably just a continuation of the last one. The next one is kind of one that I'm reading purely to make more room on a shelf because I bought loads of books, and that is More Than This by Patrick Ness. This is a book about a boy who drowns and then he wakes up in a street in England, even though he was born in England, but then he lived in America for the rest of his life, and he kind of relives his past, I think. It's just a really popular book that I picked up and need to read. The next book is a sequel to a book that I read in August, and that is P.S. I Love You by Janie Hahn, the second book in the To All the Boys I Loved Before duology. I'm really excited to the romance in this one because I really wanted the 2 main characters in the last one to get together, and it was kind of implied that they would probably do that at the end of the last one. The 2 books in the series are so photogenic, it's unreal, they're just so beautiful. The next one is also a sequel to a book that I read in August, and that is Days and Blood of Starlight, the second book to Daughter of Smoke and Bone trilogy thing, and I'm really looking forward to this because I love the first book so much. Even though these covers are kind of horrifying, I really wish I had the American ones, but I don't. So that was my August wrap up and September TBR. Those are all the books I wanted to show you. Bye!